Chris in San Jose. Hey, Chris, what are you doing?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
What's up?
First-time caller. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
We got you, bud. Thank you for calling.
Okay, all right. How are you guys doing? Hey, so I just want to weigh in a little bit on the Bob Myers situation. Willard, you hit it right on the head when you said that, I was sitting at home, I was watching the Bob Myers, conversation. I was watching the whole spiel. And then when Joe Lacob got on there, it was like, I can totally see why he's leaving. I totally get it. I mean, and then when he told him he had to work to his last day of his contract, I was just like, and he started to laugh. I was just like, I was amazed. I was shocked. Can you imagine giving your 2-week notice and your boss telling you, hey, you know what, you're going to work all the way to your last day? Probably not going to happen. But that's just me.
Well, especially in a gig like this. And what was really weird is I think we all would have been fine with it if he was joking. It didn't sound to me like he was joking. He's like, so that's the way it's going to go, and we'll be ready for the draft because Bob will be here. Bob was like, I will?
Right.
Yeah, yes, you will. All right.
And I picture Bob right now in an empty office with a couple of cardboard boxes sitting there on the Odyssey app, listening to Willard and Dibs, thinking,
bobbleheads in the box.
Seriously, he's got his Jordan Poole, his pool party bobbleheads in there. He's got his replica ring that they gave away on ring night.
He's like, hey, Draymond, should I stay all the way to June 30th? And then he whacks his head, and Draymond's like, no.
He bobbles, no. Seriously.
I mean, it was awkward. That's right. I'm not making something up here. Everybody got that a little bit yesterday, right? It was a little awkward.
It was awkward in many ways. To me, the first level of awkward was Bob Myers doing a press conference with an empty chair next to him, and Joe Lacob, I don't know if he was busy doing owner things, but he couldn't sit there for the first 20 or 30 minutes. It wasn't until it was Joe time that he, all of a sudden comes on the scene and sits down. After Bob was through with the warm-up act, it's now time for the headliner. I'm Joe Lacob, and I'm here to hold court. That, to me, was the first moment of awkwardness.
Yeah, it was just, it was strange. And then the other side, again, as we sat there and watched it together, I just, sometimes you walk into a room and you're like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right. Something is amiss. And yesterday, there wasn't anything that Joe said where you're like, oh, gosh, sirens are going off. That's terrible. How dare he? None of that. This conversation, please take it for what it is. Joe Lacob has been incredible. He's a phenomenal owner. The success is there. And all you really want, I think, as a fan, you don't want your own. I don't need the owner to be a nice guy. I don't need the owner to be anything. All I want is for the owner to be straightforward and focused on a good product. And nobody could ever say anything otherwise with regard to Joe Lacob. But after sitting with it for close to 24 hours, it absolutely resonated for me where I'm like, oh, that's why it felt so uncomfortable. Because quite frankly, I think Bob looked uncomfortable. And for many of us, it was a light bulb.
Right.
Now I get why he's so tired. That's all.
Yeah, and I appreciate Joe Lacob for being transparent because he didn't get up there and pretend about any sort of thing, about how he felt, about whether or not he was surprised, whether or not he understood why Bob was leaving, whether or not they could still be champions, whether or not the organization is still going to be the greatest in all of sports. Joe stepped up there with all the self-confidence and the hubris that you expect Joe to have. The thing that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable was the fact that this should have been a Bob Myers love fest. This should have been the send-off, all about Bob. Let's not even worry about what comes next until we get to what comes next. And then when Joe says, yeah, Bob's going to work another month, ha, 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 that made it even more awkward.
Well, that's an interesting point because I wonder if it would have come off better. Look, if Joe's going to be there, and he has every right to be, then the question of what's next is going to come up. And if you're not going to really answer who the next, or you're not going to say anything about the next general manager search, which is kind of what he did, then I would speak to it in that way. Be like, look, I know a lot of you want to know what's going to happen next. We do too. We're working on it. But outside of that, I have nothing to say today that's not about Bob. So I'm not going to tell you about roster construction. I'm certainly not going to say anything like this.
We're going to win no matter what. I don't care what the rules are. We are going to figure out a way to do it. That's what good organizations do. They figure out a way to win the game. And our game is to win games and to win championships. When we came here, this ownership group 13 years ago, we made a ridiculous proclamation about winning within 5 years. And of course, somehow we managed to do it, all of us, players and everybody involved. And we've continued to win. And look, the rules will change in the game, but we'll continue to do that. We're going to work really hard to do it. And I think we have really smart people, and we'll do it.
Like, nobody stands up at the retirement dinner and goes, look, I just want to let everybody know that our organization is not going to skip a beat. Like, we are amazing now, and we will continue to be amazing. Yes, Bob over here is leaving. Everybody give a nice round of applause for Bob. That's awesome. We're not going to miss a damn beat.
Right.
You just don't do that. Like, that comment is great. It would have been even greater if it had been at the press conference to welcome in who's next. Hey, everybody. This is Mike Dunleavy Jr.
Sure.
And the expectation for Mike is that we win. We win around here. And we're not using the CBA as an excuse.
Right.
Because we have set an expectation. By the way, that expectation was set by Bob Myers, who's been amazing here over the last 12 years. And now we hope that Mike can step in and do half of what Bob did for us for the last 12 years.
You got me thinking, Mark, and I totally agree with you in terms of what the optics would have been better, or even if Joe Lacob wanted to not do a press conference, but he could have done what they call on the side in the business, where press conference is over and Joe Lacob just goes to the side with a small group of reporters after Bob and his wife leave, and then Joe holds court on the side. It wouldn't have been on the radio. It wouldn't have been broadcast on TV. It would have been a lower profile thing. You had me thinking, though, what if Kirk Lacob is the new president of basketball ops and the general manager? Does Joe sit up there with his son when he introduces him? Oof. And what would that do in terms of the optics?
Wow.
Think about that, Mark.
My first answer is...
think about it.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, now speak.
Yeah, very quick.
No, I mean, can you imagine,
I visualized it. It's a visualization sensation.
That's a bug.
Got it. I don't think it's going to happen. And I don't think Joe's going to sit up there with him.
He's going to send his own kid up there. What, Steph, I'm going to need you to sit with my son?
No, he's going to send Mike Dunleavy Jr. up there.
Well, let's just pretend that Mike doesn't get the job, or maybe Mike doesn't want the job. Have you thought about that? Because if I'm Mike Dunleavy Jr.,
he wants the job.
I would rather have another job outside the organization as opposed to have to preside over the dismantling of this.
I get what you're saying.
If you had the opportunity of this job or another job and the money was the same, wouldn't you rather have another job where you're not going to be in this gigantic shadow?
You're basically saying, wouldn't you rather have a lower bar? And right? Isn't that what you're saying?
Well, I don't even know if it's the bar. To me, it's the job. Because the job description here is win a championship or else, and hurry, because at the back end of your gig, you're breaking this thing up.
Well, and they all say that. That's what I mean by a lower bar. Like, yeah, if you're going to go be the GM in Charlotte, then
it's always Charlotte or Orlando.
I know. Got to come up with it. You know what?
Those are good. Those are good.
I mean, it's funny sometimes the ones that we decide are small markets. I got a buddy who's a Pistons fan, and he's like, why are we always lumped into this? Detroit is not small, but that's the way that their organization's playing right now. But I guess I would say this. Like, yeah, do you want a lower bar? Do you want less pressure? Do you want something that's basically not, I think, as you're saying, kind of set up to fail? Because if you become the GM of the Warriors and Steph retires in 3 years, well, that's not your fault, but it's going to look like it's your fault. It's going to look like, well, you showed up and the Warriors got worse.
Yeah.
I would hope that the Warriors would have faith that their fan base is smarter than that. We know you don't just win 4 out of every 10 championships every decade. I know sometimes we act like that, but it's not going to always be that. And I think they have to have faith that we're smarter than that. What about this? Aren't the Warriors the job for Mike because he's already here? Like, wouldn't he be starting here much further down the road than he would be to go get another gig First of all, I don't even know any other gigs that are open where he would be a candidate right now. Yeah, but is he a candidate? I know his dad coached there, but are they talking to Mike? If we're talking in two jobs at the same time, maybe. But if only one is being offered and you're going to say, I'm going to wait for a better spot where the bar is lower, that's tough. You take the gig when it's offered to you.
I'm just saying if you had your choice. And also, in terms of if it's Mike Dunleavy Jr. who gets the job and he takes the job, even if they go on to win a championship in the next 2 or 3 years, it's not going to feel like it's your championship. It's going to feel like a Bob Myers holdover chip.
George Seifert.
Joe Lacob is going to take credit for the championship.
Well, that's going to happen no matter what.
Right. So even if you're Mike Dunleavy, it's kind of a lose-lose situation. The only thing that you benefit is you get experience as a general manager in the NBA, and that's something that you can't buy.
Or you can say, hey, if I do this with the Warriors, I know that I'm always going to have the resources that I need. You know, that's I mean, the biggest compliment.
CBA be damned.
Well, CBA be damned. I mean, the biggest compliment to Joe is that he is the opposite of John Fisher. Like, he will do whatever it takes. And as a fan, that's all you want. But as an employee, sometimes that's all you don't want. Right. I will do whatever it takes, including calling you 18 times a day.
Right.
So it's a lot. But Mike should have the energy because he hasn't been through it before. If I were Mike, I'd want the job where I know what's going on. I've been involved in all of the stuff over the last few years. I've got Steph Curry on my roster. Yeah, if I were Mike, I'd want this job.
As opposed to another job.
Yeah.
I know you'd rather have this job than have no job.
Yes.
I agree with you on that.
As opposed to any other job, too.
And we'll use the Clippers job just because that one's available. And that's to where... I think that's an interesting question because if you take the Clippers job, you have no great expectations. The Clippers have never been to an NBA Finals.
Right.
They've been to one conference championship game?
Right, but you have broken down stars.
Right.
And your owner's a maniac also.
But you have a chance to at least rework something with your own vision in your own way.
Yeah.
You come in here.
You can't do that here?
What are you going to do?
I don't know. Bob says that there's been much harder off seasons than this.
It's because there's nothing you can do.
Well, no, I don't agree.
It's Draymond Green, and he's either going to stay or if he's going to go. And you already said
you could trade
if
Jordan
Draymond
Poole.
Green's going to stay, the deal's probably already in place for Draymond to stay. So that's nothing you're going to do. You got to go to Clay and say, hey, Clay, if you really want to be here, you're going to have to play for the minimum.
I mean, do you
vet min?
Do you trade Jordan Poole? Do you conduct the draft? Do you try to win on the margins? Which, by the way, is probably all the Warriors are really thinking about right now. It's fascinating to look at the way the NBA playoffs have played out and realize that the Warriors, to me, they're not as far away as it feels like right now. I know they haven't been playing for 3 weeks, and the finals haven't even started yet. That's new for us. That's different. But by the same token, look at the way this all played out. Look at the Eastern Conference, okay? It was the exact same two teams from last year to this year. The 8 seed ended up working its way in. The Nuggets were healthy, and they certainly feel and look like a problem right now. That was a 53-win team. It's not like they're overwhelming. The Lakers are going to have to redo their whole thing. I got no idea what's going on in Memphis. Like, the Golden State Warriors, as they currently sit, are in the mix. They're not the favorite.
They're in the mix.
Right? So you don't need to. The Poole question is a different one. That's a totally different animal, as we all know. But I don't think they need to flip the roster upside down and shake it all out.
No, you can't.
By any stretch.
You can't.
And you can't. Correct.
That's part of I think the frustration of getting the job is there's only so much you can do. And maybe you can't trade Jordan Poole. Maybe you have marching orders from above that says, no, we paid Jordan Poole. We think he's the future. We still believe in that second timeline. You can't trade Jordan Poole. So now you're Mike Dunleavy and you're thinking, all right, who can I get with the 19th pick? And what veteran out there can I pay $1.8 million to come and warm the bench?
Yeah.
There's not much job in this job. I don't think.
Well,
if you win, Bob Myers wins. If you lose, you weren't as good as Bob Myers.
Yeah, but you don't need to convince everybody 1 year in when your core is not changing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've used Farhan as an example in roster construction. Nobody was going to come after Farhan for at least 2 years. And what did he have? He had a year with Boch, and then he left, and then you had a pandemic, and then you came out of that and had this banana season, and it was like nobody was even thinking about assessing roster construction for 2 or 3 years. I think I get what you're saying for sure. Is it a no credit situation? Yes, but can he take the blame for something? Let's say it does go haywire. Let's say you kind of do run it back. You don't overhaul the roster. And you come back and Steph, Clay, and Dre all look old, like decrepit old. And the Warriors don't even make the playoffs. Is anybody coming after Dunleavy?
Oh, absolutely.
See, I don't think so.
They came after Bob this year because he didn't get a big at the trade deadline or in the buyout market.
Right, but that's kind of lightweight coming after, don't you think?
In the sense that he won 4 championships, yes.
No one's calling for his gig.
888-957-9570. All the Bob haters, line it up and go ahead and pile on. The body's still warm. Take your shot. It's all you've got. Bob is gone. Go ahead and bury him because you see it on the text line, on Twitter, all the Twitter Warrior experts just Bob Myers a fraud, Steve Kerr stinks, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, of course.
It's out there.
Of course, it's always there. That's
so
the
if
nature of the
if the
gig.
big three return,
I don't think,
and they all go flaccid, my first flaccid of the month, I had to get one in before May expired. Mike Dunleavy's going to be blamed in part for not doing something. Why'd you bring these guys back? You should have traded Clay. We knew he was washed when he went 3 for 19.
See, now hold on, because Steve Kerr's on our show saying the big three's got a ton left. Joe Lacob is absolutely, I mean, he's sitting here preaching continuity. I mean, if Joe Lacob is going to stand up there and take all the credit for building this wonderful organization that, damn it, won't lose no matter the rules.
Right.
Well, then I know who to blame if it doesn't go well. You, Joe.
You be careful.
You want all the credit? How does it work? You want all the credit? You get all the blame. No? I don't think there's any scenario that has people losing their minds over Mike Dunleavy Jr. a year from now. Unless, he trades Jordan Poole for Bob Jablonski. And, do you know what I mean?
Bob's a stretch 4. He's a good player.
Right? What's the scenario that a year from now we're like Dunleavy Jr. ruined everything?
If he sits on his hands and they don't play very well.
But what you even just said, what deal can be made? What deal can you make?
Well, it depends on how creative you are.
Yeah.
And depends on how aggressive you are. And it's ultimately, I'm with you. It comes down to Joe Lacob. And I thought yesterday, once Bob said his final goodbye, Joe basically told you, it's my show. It's my team. And ever since we bought the team and we said that we were going to win within 5 years, and darn it if we weren't right, and 4 titles and 9 years later, here we are with the best organization in all of sports, and I bought the team. And I brought in Bob Myers, and I am going to make him work 1 more month, and I will still be here. The ayes have it, and there is no I in Lacob.
Yeah.
And when it all comes down, I do think that he's going to be the one this year that is squarely in the crosshairs.
Mike.
Or Joe.
Joe.
In terms of credit and blame.
Gosh. It depends on how it goes. Do you know what I mean? And the only
but do you think that Dunleavy Jr. gets the job. Do you think he trades Jordan Poole without Joe Lacob saying, yes, you can?
I don't think you can do anything without getting Joe's signature.
That's my point.
Right.
I don't think that you can throw a bounce pass to Guy Santos on the wing without Joe giving you the okay.
All right, this is a larger point, but I think it's a right. And you've been doing
my favorite.
I mean, you've been on one for the last 24 hours. Guy has gotten more run the last 24 hours than ever. I'll say this: we do this way too much in sports. Okay, something happens, and we're like, all right, who's the one that gets the credit? Who's the one that gets the blame? Nothing. This isn't a one-person show. Nothing is.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Nothing is a one-person show. Joe's got the checkbook. He's got the final stamp. But he's not the only opinion in the room. He's not the only one with ideas. He's not the only one with thoughts on how it should go. So, I don't know. The whole that person right there, you get the blame. I mean, my gosh. Right? Like there's 1,000 different things going on.
It's what we do, Mark. It's credit and blame.
Yeah. No, I know that. I just mean there's plenty to go around.